Hey guys, it's Melissa here from melissaoatman.com. I want to welcome you to another episode of Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness. I'm very excited today because we have a special guest with us. We have Mr. Paul Davis, who is a business coach, personal advisor, and the author of 3 books. And today he is going to be talking to us about how to really tap in and find our purpose in life and to really decide, are we on our purpose? And I know many of you, this is a topic near and dear to your heart. So I cannot wait to jump in and get started. But first, I want to welcome you, Paul, with us today. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Melissa. It's absolutely amazing and brilliant to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I love that you work with people and helping them to succeed because I know you work in helping them find their purpose, but you also help people who are business owners, I think, really tap into really how to be successful. And I think that's so needed. So I can't wait to hear what you're doing now. But before we kind of get into that, I would love it if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you start on this journey that led you to helping other people find their purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose, but let me go back a little bit. So I originally trained as a management accountant. I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do when I left school, but I ended up doing a lot of different things. But one of my main degrees would be management accounting. Um, and what I would have been doing is going into companies and helping them to turn around financially. So companies that were making losses, I'd help them to turn around into profits and help them then to grow and scale. But a part of me that always was able to do that was ever since I was a kid growing up. Um, as a younger kid, if I really go back, I used to do healing for people. So when they'd come to the house, I do healing. And so whether they had cancer or arthritis or rheumatism or whatever it may be, that's what I used to do as a kid. But then when I became a teenager, that wasn't so cool. So I decided not to do it. It was just a natural gift that I had since birth. But also with that, I was able to, not too dissimilar to yourself, Melissa, in terms of I get images and knowings for people, and primarily for me, it's around what they're to do in life, what their purpose is. And those knowings and insights come from the perspective of seeing and understanding and empathically knowing what the difference they are here to make in this world. So growing up as an empath, I and having those knowings and insights, I'd know a lot for other individuals, but it's not something let me put it this way, training as management accountant, it's not something you tell your clients and it's not something you tell your colleagues. So I kept it hidden for a lot of my adult life. Um, and in effect, how I became so successful in growing businesses was because I was in effect putting people on the right path, knowing what their purpose is, put them on the right track, and therefore with the management accounting and my knowledge of scaling businesses, they reached huge success. But for me, it's about them making the impact in the world and making a difference in the world. And I suppose growing up and even into adult life, I just thought, and in some respects naively, assumed that everybody else could do the same as what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
But it used to play on my mind quite a lot, to be quite frank. And I absolutely wished that somebody would come along to me and tell me what my purpose was, what I was to do. So while I was putting other people on their track, I literally just would love for someone to come along to tell me. But to cut a long story short, roll forward quite a number of years and into 2011, and my first brother passed away. It's quite suddenly. And I was there when he came out of surgery. He had to get emergency surgery. And the doctor told me that he only had a couple of hours to live. So I was there while he was passing away, and making the necessary phone calls and all the kinds of things, and being with him. But in the weeks that followed, in my mind, it was a case of here was somebody trying desperately to hang on to life. Whereas for me, I spent the vast majority of my life wanting to check out of life. So from the weeks and months that followed, I suppose it kind of came to me from the perspective I had a massive download or an insight or an epiphany, if you want to call it that way, in terms of, well, my purpose is actually putting people on their purpose. It's what I've been doing all my life since I was a kid. But for me, it was a major, major wake-up call and a realization, oh, okay, so that's what I'm supposed to do. But all along in growing up and knowing that of what I was doing, I'd regularly get comments from people saying, Paul, you're just making it up. So I'd share insights with them and share knowings with them and say, look, I've no data to back it up. I've no I can't give you any facts or figures on this one, but just do this, but don't do that. So I guide them from that perspective. And in some respects, some clients would say, Paul, you're just making up, where are you getting this from? And then if they followed what I guided them to do, they always hit their success levels. And the ones that didn't, unfortunately, ended up getting into the muck. So for me as an accountant and being logical and trying to have a process and a system, what I wanted to find out was, okay, so how can I decipher from the knowings and the insights that I get from my clients, how can I turn that, for one better word, into a process? And therefore, if I could share that process with my clients, which was the promise I made after Eugene passed away, if I could share that process with my clients and guide them through that particular process, they wouldn't necessarily have to rely on my insights or my knowings or what it is that I do. And therefore they could see the evidence in their life. And from that evidence, they can actually say, oh, okay, so that's all the elements of what I need for what their true unique life purpose is. Because it's all on an unconscious level. So they'll never figure it out from a conscious perspective, but it's all on an unconscious level. And given the gifts that I have, again, not too dissimilar to yourself, Melissa, it's when you're connecting on that level, you can get the insights, you can get the knowings for your clients in order to actually guide them. So what I developed over the years was what I now call the executive code, and it's the executive code that I bring my clients through in all aspects of their life. It's not just their life purpose, but it affects every single aspect of their life. So that's what I've been doing for quite a number of years at this stage. And the feedback that I get from clients, they're absolutely astounded and amazed, because how I can give them their life purpose in literally a few hours, compared to the years and years that they've been searching and working with clients and reading books. And a lot of what's said online about life purpose just doesn't match what I explain, which is very, very different.
That is really cool that you can do that. And I think it's funny because going back to what you said a while ago, you said that you wish someone would come along and tell you what you do for other people, which is what your purpose. And I think that's really an interesting thing, that a lot of people who have abilities think they can't really get anything for themselves. Like they can tell others all about. I think it's just harder because we're close to the situation, which I think is part of the reason. I think a lot of people, when they're trying to find their purpose, again, if you're so close to the situation, sometimes you can't actually see what's happening or what's going on because you're too clouded by your own perceptions. So I think that's why when you go and work with somebody else like you, it's a lot easier, because you don't have their preconceived notions about what they should be doing and all of the conditions that we've been told, like, we should do this, you shouldn't do that. I think we get really bogged down by that a lot of times.
Yeah. And a lot of information that's out there that talks about life purpose is, in my mind, incorrect. So people can end up down a lot of rabbit holes and not getting the answers that they absolutely, the answers that they need and they desire. So yeah, let's try and change the narrative. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So how do you help people? Like, what do you do with people in order to start helping them? Like, do you tell them this is your purpose, or do they come to that on their own with your guidance?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because in the early days I used to tell them, but then two things would happen. One is that they would get overwhelmed and say, who am I to do that? There's no way I could do that. And all their kind of inhibitions and their fears would show up. And then the other side, they wouldn't believe it, in the sense of, and that's where the comments that I would get would be, Paul, you're just making that up. And while it was kind of nice to hear, they're, in some respects, they would kind of feel that it would be too distant to what they're doing right now at the moment. So what I now do is that I bring them through a series of questions. It's quite a lot of different questions, but I'm using my intuition to guide them using those questions and drill them down so that they can actually see the evidence in their life. And when they see the evidence in their life and we bring it all together and they know, what they're to do, how to do it, why they're to do it, and what's going to give them the joy and fulfillment, and all of those elements together, when they see all of that, now they're overwhelmed in a good way, because now they're overwhelmed with joy. They know what it is. Immediately what shows up then, I'm not joking you, within literally 5-10 minutes, immediately, even though they've been searching for years to find out what their purpose is, and when we bring all the information together and say, oh, well, now that's what your purpose is. So I'm using a mix of the methodology that I've developed, but also my intuition. But immediately what shows up is, how am I to do that? Is somebody going to pay me to do that? How am I going to make money out of it? Where do I even start? And that's where my training as management accountant and growing and scaling businesses come into play, because one of the books that I wrote was, how you get more clients, more fees, and more time. So immediately I'm guiding them in relation to how they, for want of a better word, monetize their life purpose. And their life purpose is always about making a difference. It's never as such about themselves. It's always connected to make it a much bigger difference in the world. And some people can see that. I get to see it immediately. They don't get necessarily to see it. But the questions that come up is, how can I turn this into a career or a business?
That's a great question, because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, because they have these great ideas or they know what they want to do to help, but they're not really sure, how can I make a living on, because it's great to want to serve people, but you also have to eat and have clothes and all of
You
this.
got to put food on the table, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to go back to what you said. I think it's really funny. I really love that you guide them to finding their own purpose, because I agree with you. Whenever I was, I don't know, my late 20s, early 30s, I went to a psychic show with my sister. And one of the women there walked right up to me and she was like, "You're supposed to be doing this." And I thought she was insane, because I was like, I don't have any psychic abilities. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Because as a little girl, I remember having an imaginary friend that I think now was my spirit guide. But as I got older, that kind of went away. I was always fascinated by psychics and mediums and always watched shows and read books and all of this, but I didn't think I had any of the ability myself, until I realized, as I got older, I just don't connect in the way that I see people standing there in front of me. I get it in a different way. And so that's when I realized. But when she told me, you're supposed to be a healer, you're supposed to be doing this work as a medium, I almost fell on the floor laughing, because I thought she was insane. And I totally, and it wasn't for many years later that it actually came about, that I started doing healing work, excuse me, and doing this podcast. So I thought she was nuts, honestly. So I can really understand and relate that if you just tell your client, this is what you're supposed to do, that they would say, okay, whatever. Yeah. All right. I just paid you for nothing, but then if you take them through them discovering who they are themselves and what their purpose would be, that is a much more, I think, effective approach, and probably a lot more believable for your clients.
It is, yeah. And let me just say, there's a fairy tale that I think most kids will have heard growing up, and that's Hansel and Gretel. Mm-hmm. And it's one that I share with my clients from the perspective of, and for your listeners, if you're not aware of the story, it's where, it's two kids and they go into the forest, and in order to make sure that they can find their way back home, they leave breadcrumbs as they're making their way through the forest. Now, unfortunately, the breadcrumbs get eaten, but I use the analogy from the point of view of that, sometimes we don't get to see the breadcrumbs. They are there. We do leave a trail throughout our whole life, and the breadcrumbs are always there. But sometimes they get covered over by maybe the leaves or the branches or whatever. We just don't get to see them. But the whole purpose of our breadcrumbs is for us to find our way back home. And I don't mean our physical home, but I mean our home back to our soul. That's what we're here to do. And it's the work that we're to do, part of the work that we're to do. But there's breadcrumbs throughout our whole life, and it's our unconscious, or think of it from your soul, your spirit, whatever terminology that you want to use. It's constantly trying to guide you back to home, back to what it is that you're here to do. And every single individual has a mission to do. Every single individual has a mission to fulfill. So it's our unconscious trying to guide us the whole time, trying to get us to do what we're supposed to do. And I use the analogy of the feather, the brick, and the trucks. And the feathers are those light touches of, we might be watching a movie, or we listen to, a podcast, for example, or we're having a conversation with somebody, and there's something that's said or something that we see, and it resonates internally within ourselves, and it's heartfelt. We know it. We kind of just get that light bulb moment inside ourselves. Say, yeah, that makes sense, and it just resonates. But then we just forget about it. It's just a light touch of a feather. But then if we don't listen to those feathers, well, then the brick comes along. Now you can imagine, the brick is a little bit more subtle than the feather. So imagine getting smacked over the head with a brick. Well, then, that's where, we get a financial setback, or we lose our job, or there's a relationship breakdown, or whatever it might be, and so on. It's something that we can get over, but it does grab our attention. And I mentioned in my first book that, I'm the brick. When clients find me, I am that brick. And it's our unconscious, again, trying to communicate to us and say, look, I'm going to smack you over the head with a brick in order for you to pay attention. Now, unfortunately, for some people, if they don't listen to the brick, well, then the truck comes along.
Yeah.
And the truck comes up from the point of view of, it could be a complete financial breakdown. It could be bankruptcy. It could be a business failure. It could be a complete relationship breakdown. It could be an illness that is life altering, that we can get over it, provided we follow our path, but it is life altering, and they're the trucks, and nobody wants the trucks in our lives. But that is our unconscious. That's our literally us being guided all the time back to find our way home.
Yeah, and that's so true too, because we always get little nudges, but I think often we go through life in such a quick manner, just with blinders on, going so fast, that we don't notice them, or we don't stop to pay attention to them. And then you're right. If we don't, the universe will get our attention they will get our attention in a way. Yeah. So it happens in a lot of different ways. But I like to call those like my tower moments, like the tower here in tarot, because that is when everything comes crumbling down, but it's always for a reason to shift you on a different path.
Yeah. It's not easy, but they're there for a reason.
Absolutely. And I think we just really need to be better about listening, because I always talk about, when I wrote my book, that I didn't know if I should be writing a book. And then there was a commercial on TV that said, "Do you need permission to write your book?" Well, here it is. And I was like, okay, there's a sign. So they're everywhere. We just need to be better about learning how to listen to them. Is that one of the things that you kind of help people when you work with them and helping them find a purpose? Do you teach them how to pay more attention to guidance?
It's something that so before I used to do it one-on-one with clients and teach them how to tune in and how to be more, how would I say, to listen to the inspired thoughts a little bit more, to be able to understand them an awful lot more quicker. But since the pandemic started, I started a community, an online community, which isn't on social media, which my clients absolutely love. So within that community, it's called the Executive Code. And within that community, I bring my clients through a lot of different things from the point of view of, on one train, it's personal mastery. On the other train, then it's business mastery. So when it comes to personal mastery, it's around, okay, so how do we deal with fear? How do we deal with anxiety? How do we deal with overwhelm? How do we listen to that intuitive side for ourselves? And how do we develop our intuition? Because everybody can develop intuition. It's not that, one person is gifted over another. We can all develop intuition, but it's how much effort we want to put into actually developing it. So, it's all around, where I suppose I'm different from the perspective of, there's a lot of things said in the mainstream, which I will, for one bad word, I'll go against. So, whether it comes to manifesting things in your life or whatever, and funny, I got a text from a client today about an intention that she had set within the community going back in July, and it's now literally, as of today, that intention has come true. So it's not about manifesting in how a lot of people talk about manifesting. It's the intention that you actually have, and that dictates everything. But yeah, sorry, in short answer to your question, Melissa, yeah, it's something that I absolutely teach my clients, because it makes their life so much more effortless if they're working with their unconscious. Their unconscious is trying to get their intention all the time. Most people's personality, their ego will want to have things happen in a particular way, but actually when you turn the tables around completely and follow your unconscious, what your soul is actually trying to guide you to do, that's when life absolutely changes, and that's when everything becomes an awful lot more effortless. Yeah, so the more we can teach our clients how to do that, the better.
And what would you say to someone who may be out there listening, saying to themselves, I don't get any guidance. I can't hear my higher self talking to me, and I'm just walking around blindly. I don't have guides. I have nobody. I'm just out here flying by the seat of my pants. I have no idea what's going to happen in my life. Because I know there are people out there who are listening going, I don't have gifts. I don't have these abilities. So what would you say to those people out there listening who maybe think they can't hear any guidance?
Yeah, a few things come up just as you say that. One is there are people that are there that don't believe in anything at all. So my second brother that passed away on the 1st of September, just gone. My last conversation with him was, I said to him, my last conversation with him was, Anthony, well, look, when you get to the other side, let me know. And he said, Paul, look, I don't believe in any of that kind of stuff, so I just continue doing what I'm doing. So there are some people that don't believe that there's anything like that, nothing outside them. So not that you'll never convince them, but that there will be a few wake-up calls. There's other people that if their language, along what you described, Melissa, is along the lines of, oh, I don't get any guidance, there's nothing out there, and I never get anything, and so on. Well, then, if that's what you think, well, then absolutely, that's what's going to happen. But the guidance is there. So it's part is the language that you're using. So part of your own inner personality will try and dismiss everything that's going on, or everything that's been said, and to try and prove that it's not there. So it's a confirmation bias that's in your mind. But if you change your language, even as simply as, I am being guided, so what does my guidance look like? Now you're changing your mindset from the perspective, okay, so to seek out and look for a different confirmation bias to show, okay, so what is the guidance? We are always, always, always being guided. And that can be simple. Every single individual that I've come across will say, if I ask them the question, look, have you ever had a situation whereby you've entered into something and you just had that gut feeling that, do you know what, it doesn't feel right. There's something about it, even though the logic says, yeah, no, I should do this, but that gut feeling is, no, it doesn't feel right. That's your guidance, that's your intuition. So everybody gets it, but they just try and dismiss it as much as they possibly can. It's always there.
And I think too, there is an ability to also work with the universe and your guides and say, I need these specific signs. Like, this is what I will recognize if you show me this.
Yeah.
Because I have people who come to me and say, well, I say this, and then I saw this, but then they'll say, but then I don't know if that was a sign.
But
Well,
let me put it
it
this
was.
way. The universe does not like doubt.
Yeah.
And the more you doubt the universe, and people use the terminology universe. Other people refer to higher power, higher mind, God, higher intelligence, super conscious. There's a lot of different terminology. But if you think of it from the perspective of, imagine somebody that you absolutely love and trust in your life. And if you're constantly doubting that person that's in your life, and that person is trying to guide you all the time, you absolutely love and adore this person, and they absolutely love and adore you equally. It's unconditional love. And if you're constantly doubting them, well, then what are you really communicating to that other person that absolutely loves and adores you?
Yeah.
The universe does not like doubt. Not that it's going to be, it's not going to do anything wrong. It doesn't, because it absolutely loves it. All it knows is unconditional love. That's all it knows. So it's not going to harm you. It's not going to do anything wrong to you. It's just, it's you and not having that trust in the universe to say, actually, okay, so I am being guided. And yeah, there are different things out there from the perspective of, if you think there's a lot of power in numbers. And, for me, for example, if I'm looking for that kind of confirmation for my clients, I kind of say to them, look at, see if you can see if 3 digits come up at the same time. So that could be 3 sevens. Like I'm a 7th son of a 7th of a 7th. So 3, 7, and 12 are powerful numbers from my perspective. But look for, numbers that show up, like, so 3 1s, 3 2s, or 3 3s as you're having a thought. And then you can use that as a signal to be confirmed to yourself. Other people will use, if they name the sign and ask for the sign to show up. So whether that's a feather, whether it's a bird, whether it's whatever, it helps the conscious mind to grasp it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But as you move on, and the more you develop from an intuitive perspective, and the more you develop your trust, because it is actually, bottom line is, it gets down to the trust. And there's times there will be in your life whereby, do you know what, you've got to take that leap of faith. And I've had to take that leap of faith so many times, and every single time becomes harder and harder to take that leap of faith. Maybe it's just because I'm getting older and I become more risk adverse.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is so difficult to take that leap of faith. And no matter how many signs that you get shown up in the world and you ask for, it's just so difficult to take that leap of faith. And the universe will not necessarily give you those signs. It's sometimes you literally just have to take that leap. Oh my God, every single time I've taken the leap of faith, it has always worked out so much better than what I'd even ever anticipated. The parachute always shows up, always.
Yeah. I think that we're the only ones who really are putting limits on the universe. I think it's our own limiting beliefs that this couldn't happen or it can't show up. And I think also we tend to, as humans, want to control everything. So we want it to show up in a certain way or at a certain time frame. And I think we really limit the universe when we do that too, because your miracles can show up in any form.
Yeah. There's the universe is completely infinite, which means that there's infinite possibilities. Mm-hmm. Time doesn't exist. From the universe perspective, time does not exist. And that's one of the hardest thing for people to get around. So therefore they don't have patience and they want it happening by a particular time frame. But if they I'm gonna say 2 words. If you just let go, just trust and just let go.
It's the hardest thing for people to do.
It is so hard. Don't get me wrong, it is the hardest thing to do. But honestly, it's the key to unlocking everything. And the more you do it, we are coming up to Christmas time now. It's like every single day becomes like Christmas morning as a kid. You're waking up, you don't know how it's going to be delivered. And no matter how many times you try and figure out how you want it to be delivered, as soon as you let go of the how it's to be delivered and just allow it to happen and just follow your guidance and wait for it to show up, you'll always be amazed. It'd be like waking up on that Christmas morning, unwrapping that gift, and it comes in the most unusual way that you could never even imagine. And that's literally the infinite possibilities of the universe. And it's just, honestly, from my perspective, it knocks me for 6 every single time.
Yeah. And you're really so right about that, because just this week, I've had we have 2 amazing podcast listeners who are also my patrons. One sent bracelets, and I have to put this on there because she'll see this.
Wow.
For my sister, myself, and my mom. My mom's going through pancreatic cancer, and so we're dealing with all of that. And she was so kind to send 4 bracelets, one also going to my daughter, for us to support her. And then just another listener, so that was Maria, and then Ginger sent today, I just got a book in the mail by Brene Brown. because they're just so, my listeners are amazing people. And I know the universe sends people into your life to bring you amazing and wonderful surprises all of the time. And it can every
Yeah,
day be like Christmas when you're surrounded by people who are for your highest good and situations that are for your highest good. And I see that every single day. So I totally believe that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. That's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I love my listeners. They're amazing. They're wonderful people, every single listener out there. So appreciate all of you.
Yeah, cool.
So tell us about your books because you have three books, and I know you said the one book is called The Executive Code. Is that correct, or is that the name of
Yeah,
the?
no, I've the community called the Executive Code. My podcast is called the Executive Code. Three books. Yeah, the first book came out shortly after my first brother passed away in 2012, and that was called Evolve. So that was my attempt, naively as much in some respects, my attempt to kind of talk spirituality in business. But there is channeling in the actual book itself. There's hidden messages within the book itself, and then there's a conclusion, which there's a couple of hidden messages even in the title of the book. Let's put it that way. So the first book is called Evolve. If your listeners know Mary Ann Williamson, which I know a lot of your listeners will, she even gave me a quote for the book, which is just phenomenal. Like when I talk about the universe and talk about how these things come about, I sent her a copy of the book after it was published, and to receive a personal email from Mary Ann Williamson herself in my inbox that day was just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that was my first book in 2012, and then a couple of years later, I published another book, which it's purely just aimed at people in professional services that want to create a business because of a lot of the work that I do. Because as I said earlier on, a lot of people want to figure out how can I turn this my gifts and what I'm to do into a business, and that's more, which is how to get more clients, more fees, more time. And then the third book is it's co-authored with 61 or 62 other authors. And the question we were asked, Melissa, was what's the advice we would give our grandchildren to have a better life, a better world, and a better business? And so we each worked to put a chapter to answer each one of those questions. So we've some amazing, and some well-known social entrepreneurs that have co-authored the book in as well. So it's called Better Life, Better Business, Better World. So that was my third book, and I'm in the process of writing another book. I'm not too sure when that's going to be published. That's up to the universe. But it's 80% there. I got, for one better word, I got diverted over to do a podcast, which I started in April last year. That's called the Executive Code, and it's through the podcast is where I'm sharing the knowledge and the information and the guidance for clients, and to help them to navigate over the last couple of years in terms of the pandemic and what's happening out there and so on. But we are in for a bit of turmoil over the next while. I don't want to scare anybody, but it is going to be quite challenging for an awful lot of people. So the podcast is there to try and help people navigate that turmoil over the next number of years. And people are being asked to step forward. And I mean step forward from perspective of they're being called to, the universe is actually calling them to step forward into their purpose. And now is the time for them to step into their purpose and absolutely trust and believe, because they've a lot of work to do. I mean, a serious amount of significant work to do. And if, again, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I've seen it so many times, and I've seen it accelerate. It's the energy I'm just picking up over the last while. It's accelerating an awful lot more. And it's accelerating faster, if that makes sense. That they need to step into their purpose, and if they don't, well then, yeah, those bricks and trucks will come along. And as we said, nobody wants those trucks to come along.
No. Start taking the hints right now. Start listening to you.
Yeah, it's going to be an easier route for you.
Yeah. Well, I love that you have this podcast to help with that because they know there's a lot of anxiety right now. I think fear and anxiety are really high in the world
Yeah,
with everything that's happening and everything that's going on. And, I just always try to tell people that you just can't give in to the fear. You can't
no,
focus on that. You've got to focus on all of the blessings around you and all of the ways in which, you know, we still have a lot of amazing things going on right now. And it's our time to focus on that. But I do think that people are being called more and more now to step into their purpose. And it's so important
yeah,
because we need people to step into their purpose.
yeah,
I think there's so many systems that are broken right now that are
yeah,
trying to be torn down to be rebuilt, but we
yeah,
need those people to step forward to, lead that,
yeah,
to lead the way for all of the things that are not working anymore.
yeah, yeah.
So I love that you're helping people to step into their purpose. I think that's an amazing thing. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
There's one book, I don't know whether you've come across it, Melissa, but I came across it a good while ago, because you mentioned fear, and most of your listeners would probably have read the book Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Most people that are into personal development will kind of have read that book. But what they may not be aware of is that he wrote his second book, but it was published after his death. And that second book was called Outwitting the Devil. And in the book was a conversation that Napoleon Hill had with the devil. And it's be similar to Conversations with God, if you could think along those lines with Neil Donald Walsh. But in that book, Napoleon Hill outlines, in effect, that 98% of the world are not on purpose. And how the devil gets to them is through fear.
Mhm.
So 98% of the population are not on their purpose, and only
That's a
2% are.
huge number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the biggest tactic that the devil has is through fear.
Hmm.
Just when you mentioned fear. So when given the work that I do, and because I do see it quite regularly, the people are being called into their purpose. The only way I can describe what's happening right now at the moment, it's the only sense that I don't follow anybody as such because I don't want to be influenced. But my own sense of what's happening right now at the moment is think of it from the perspective of the troops are being rallied, on the good side and the bad side.
Hmm.
So, if you want to be on the good side, the troops are being rallied right now at the moment, and that rally of the troops is accelerating quite significantly. And the faster those troops are being rallied, there's, for one better word, there's a war to be won.
Hmm.
A lot of the old structures are being broken down. The new world is coming on its way. It is so much on its way, but it's how that new world is to be formed. So the universe needs those troops to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, this has been such a fun conversation, and I really appreciate you being here and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with us. If anyone wants to purchase your book, any of your 3 books, or listen to your podcast, or maybe they want to work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I suppose the easiest, if they go to my website, which is paulwilliamdavis.com. And if they go to that site, they'll see all the links, the link to my podcast, link to my community, the link to the books and all that kind of thing. So everything's there. So paulwilliamdavis.com is the easiest. Yeah.
Awesome. And I will also have those links in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go there and you're driving while you're listening to this, don't worry about it. You can go back to the show notes later and just click on the website and go directly there. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a minute. Not like
Sure.
you haven't already been on the hot seat for a few minutes. But I always like to ask our guests to leave our listeners with a piece of wisdom that they can take with them for their day. So, what piece of advice could you give our listeners to take with them today?
um, I think a lot of people look for how they can reach their highest potential. And in everything that I've both researched and seen and witnessed in the people that I've worked with, if you want to reach your full potential, knowing your true life purpose is the single most powerful way to reach your full potential and to achieve the success and the fulfillment that you want, without a shadow of a doubt. So it really, I suppose, maybe instead of leaving words of wisdom, I might just ask the question in terms of, say 10 years from now, and God forbid you're not on your deathbed, but let's just say 10 years from now, and you do look back. If you continue doing what you're doing right now at the moment, do you have any regrets? So, I mentioned, two of my brothers passed away, one just recently, 1st of September. Now, he had no regrets, and he absolutely said, I have no regrets, but equally, he just didn't want to die. But if 10 years from now, you continue doing what you're doing, and, if what's holding you back and your fears and your anxiety, or your worry about what other people might think or what other people might say, if you continue doing what you're doing, are you actually going to have any regrets? And that's I think the ultimate question for anybody to ask themselves. And perhaps then that might just instigate a bit of change for themselves. Say, actually, what? Maybe today is the day I change, and today is I step into my own power and do what it is that I'm supposed to do in this lifetime.
I love that. It's beautiful words of wisdom, and you're so right. You can change. You can wake up tomorrow and decide that you want things to be different, and it doesn't even have to be an overhaul of your whole life. You can change one thing at a time to put you on purpose. Habits, something you do continuously that brings about change. Most people think of bad habits, but they can be good habits too. They can be that, tomorrow I'm deciding that I'm going to spend 5 minutes meditating in the morning before I start my day. And that's one thing that, could help you to slow down, get the messages, all of those things are ways that we can make little positive changes every day. So I think that's such a great piece of advice.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. This was such a great conversation.
No, thank you so much. It was hopefully your listeners have gotten a lot from it, and maybe that take that next step.
Yes,
thank you so
absolutely. Step into your purpose. We need you guys. The universe needs you. The world
Yeah.
needs you. I think that's the one thing people really have a hard time with, is some people think, I don't have a purpose. I don't matter. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I don't matter. I'm insignificant. What I do, my contribution doesn't make a difference. But it does. It absolutely does. And of course, everyone has a purpose. You're needed so desperately.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And I hope that you have much success in everything you're doing. I can't wait to go check out your podcast. And I hope that other people listening here will also go and check that out as well.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And I want to thank all of you for being here with us too. Don't forget, you can join me over on Patreon. If you become a patron, you can actually watch this interview live, because I do post videos to my Patreon page for those who are with us. You can also join me on social media. On Facebook, I go live Mondays at 6:30 Central, where I do a free card reading. You show up for the live, I'll pull a card especially for you. And you can go to my website, melissaoatman.com. You can now purchase merchandise from the podcast. So go check all of that out. I hope you guys have a beautiful day from wherever you're listening. As always, I'm sending you so much love and light, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.